Welcome to another lesson in effective writing. Today we're going to talk about writing descriptions. Descriptions are extremely important to your writing because they bring your writing to life. They bring your reader into that moment with you. And it's not just that they're seeing it and experiencing it the way that you did, though they are, and that's important. What they're really experiencing with you is the emotion, because good descriptions provoke and evoke emotion. Good descriptions paint a mental picture in your reader's mind, much like an artist who takes just the right colors and blends them with just the right color to make this perfect blend, and he puts it on the canvas and with very accurate brushstrokes brings this image to life. That's really what a writer does with words. Words are your paints. And you're painting those mental pictures. Those mental pictures are much easier to remember than words. Think about the stories that you have read or even watched in movies. Do you remember them word for word? Some of them you probably do. I'm sure you have favorite book lines and favorite movie lines that you could quote very easily. But telling the whole story, do you remember it word for word? Probably not, especially not if you've only seen it once or twice. But you remember the story because you have those mental images in your mind, and that's what you want to do for your reader. And those mental pictures, as I said, elicit emotion. We, as human beings, are very emotional creatures at our core. And that doesn't mean that we cry a lot. People often mistake emotion as, oh, you're a crier. It doesn't have to be cry, sad, gloom, or even the opposite of happiness that you mean when you say provokes an emotion. Happy and sad are just two of many emotions on the spectrum. And you want to get the emotions of the reader involved, whatever those emotions may be. If in your story you're talking about confusion, or in your essay, you're talking about confusion, you want your reader to feel that confusion. So you're bringing your reader to that next level of writing. Good description always starts with emotion, and I mean your emotion as the writer. What do you love or hate? Those are good places to start. Because usually everything that in life that we deal with, we either like it or we don't. We either love it or we hate it. And why? There are very few things that are on our we're just okay with it list. And if it is on that list, why? Always ask yourself why, and then make a list of your reasons based on your 5 sentences. For example, you may say, I love Christmas. Well, why? So think of your 5 sentences. I love the smell of the fireplace in the living room. Well, what does it smell like? Think of what your fire in your home smells like. Do your parents burn pine? Do they burn whatever kind of wood they may burn? Does your mom put potpourri near the fire so it kind of catches the sense of cinnamon and maybe nutmeg or whatever potpourri she puts out? Another sense. I love the deep greens and reds. Where do you see those deep greens and reds? Christmas trees, wreaths, garland, Christmas presents, and the list of course goes on. Cranberries, cranberry sauce. I love the sounds of bells, of jingle bells. I love the sounds of Christmas caroling. And then for everything that you list for your 5 sentences, explain on paper what that sound is. So you're just bringing those details to life for your reader. And the key to doing all of that and doing it well is to be a good observer. Henry James said to try to be one of the people on whom nothing is lost. Be someone on whom nothing is lost. So that means when you go into the store and you bump into someone that you and your friend are talking to this person, and then he walks away, you and your friend finish your shopping, and you say, "Did you notice that only half his face was sunburned?" And your friend says, "What?" "Oh no, I didn't pay attention." You are the one on whom nothing was lost. You caught the detail that probably this guy you just bumped into was driving with his window down, so the sun only got half of his face. Or he fell asleep outside and had his face turned so that only half his face got the sun. Something happened. And so that's interesting. And you caught it. And there are many, many examples of that. There are different advertisements that you may catch that your friend may not. You want to be someone on whom nothing is lost, so that you always have a very wide bank of experiences from which to draw. Anne Morrow Lindbergh said, "An experience isn't finished until it is written." So your essay is helping you take your experiences and really finish them for yourselves, to really know what you're thinking about a subject. And you will be able to do it because you were someone on whom nothing was lost. And it's an exercise. You have to train your brains to be able to do that. I often tell my students, when it comes to writing descriptions and being someone on whom nothing is lost, that good writers have to be good creepers. It's just the sorry truth. You eavesdrop on other people's conversations, you snoop your nose in where it probably doesn't belong. And of course, that's all within a certain degree, of course. But you want to be someone on whom nothing is lost. Good dialogue, as we talked about before, in part comes from paying attention to other people's dialogues. Good descriptions come from paying attention to those things that are around you. So some things to observe are, first of all, your sensory details. And they're your 5 senses: the taste, feel, smell, sound, and touch. Always go there first and describe those things to the best of your ability. We'll talk about that in just a minute. Another observation is missing details. If you come home every day and mom already has dinner started and you can smell her stew in the pot, or you can smell her firing up the grill for hot dogs that night, but one day you come home and there is no smell, that lack of a detail is also very telling, and it creates a mood. Observe changes, and it's important to point out those changes in your essay. And observe exact details, not generalizations. You don't want to just say your mom had a lovely rose bush. Well, what color were the roses? What size were the roses? What kind of flower bed were they in? Did they have thorns? All of these different things. Your key is to show, don't tell. You don't just tell me your mom had a flower garden. You bring me into the garden and show me that flower garden. E.L. Doctorow said, "Write not that it's raining, but the feel of being rained upon." Those descriptions aren't always just nouns and adjectives. A lot of the time, descriptions come from the really key and strong verbs that you're using in your essay. What your people are doing and feeling often come in the form of verbs. Of course, you'll need nouns with those too, and the strongest and most exact noun is your friend. You'll want to avoid using a weak noun with an adjective to try to make up for it. That usually ends up really weak writing. Or a weak verb and trying to use an adverb to beef it up. You don't want to say, he walked slowly. Say he trudged. He dragged his feet. Whatever would create the correct mood for your essay. Some keys to writing good descriptions are, first, show, don't tell. I just said that, but I can't say it enough because that really is one of the most important keys. Use strong action verbs and precise nouns. State defining details rather than the obvious. So, if you're at a baseball game, you can mention the players in passing, but don't spend a lot of time describing the baseball diamond. Most people, even if they aren't interested in sports whatsoever, know the basic idea of what the baseball field looks like. So don't state the obvious. Point out those details that aren't as obvious. Maybe there's a character in front of you who's just yelling his brains out at the team you're rooting for, or whatever the case may be. So you're pointing out details that are filling in the mood for your reader. Use adjectives that reveal the unexpected or out of the ordinary. Use participles. Those participles are really important because a participle is an adjective that's really a hidden verb. For example, if I said the crackling fire, crackling is the adjective, but it's a participle because crackle, in another sense, is really a verb. But a crackling fire, what kind of fire? Crackling. It's a hidden verb, and it adds movement and sound and creates more life in your writing. Avoid adverbs unless they're absolutely necessary for clarity and accuracy. Adverbs generally weaken your writing. And those adverbs are things like very, really, decidedly, a lot of the ly words, so you'll want to avoid them unless they're absolutely necessary. Let's go back to what we talked about with the senses. I said one of the key points to observing and what to observe are your senses. Those smells, sights, tastes, sounds, and textures. The key to getting those involved is to create a mental picture for yourself through thinking about those things. Here, if you look at this picture, very disturbing picture, you can probably already sense a smell based on this picture if you use your imagination. You can imagine how it might feel. As a later exercise, you could take this picture and write out the many descriptions, the many ways that you could describe this very disturbing little creature. One of the ways that will help you really bring your writing to life and make those descriptions clear are to use metaphors and similes. For example, sometimes you might want to say that something looks like something else, thereby you'll be using a simile. In one of Sheila Bender's writings, she was talking to a class of children, and she was having them do some writing, and one boy wrote, "My teacher is gross." The teacher, who was not offended apparently, told him that she understood how he felt about his teacher, but she didn't get a picture of what his teacher was. In what way was she gross? Did she pick her nose? Does she dress really badly? Does she smell? So he wrote, "When she is angry, my teacher looks like a horse with the reins pulled back." Well, that is quite the mental picture, and the little boy nailed it by using a simile. So think about who you're describing, and then think, looks like. What does it look like? And then use that mental image for your writing. My teacher had the face of a camel. That is all the description that you need. Perfectly sets the scene. Your teacher almost doesn't even need any other descriptors, whether she was tall or anything else, because you have this one key, really good description. As you're writing your descriptions, remember to observe accurately. It's a really bad thing to call a rose a dandelion. And if you describe this beautiful red dandelion with its thorns that pricked your finger, your reader will think, dandelions aren't red. Dandelions don't have thorns. So you haven't observed accurately. Take details readily. As you're really thinking and observing things, accept it and think about it in the moment. Don't wait until later. And write down what you're describing. It'll be a good exercise for you to take a walk and just describe and catalog what you see exactly as you've seen it, and catalog your impressions of them. So you might describe bare tree branches as long knobby fingers. It's a little bit cliche, but you could just catalog it as you see it. Vivid images in the work of the writer is long effort. You have to take the time to do those exercises and to keep practicing and to keep editing, because the more you do it, the better you'll become. Without continual practice, senses grow dull through disuse and writing becomes general and hazy. And that's what makes really poor, uninteresting writing, which, of course, you don't want. Rachel Carson said, "The discipline of the writer is to learn to be still and listen to what his subject has to tell him." As you're working on paper 2, I hope that you're learning to be still and that you're listening to what your subject has to tell you, and I'm looking forward to reading your papers.